Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, what can the president do if the U.S. is led into a proxy war with Iran? We tell you one congressman's plan. Plus, the World War II Museum in New Orleans opens its final wing. Get a look inside the now completed War Museum. Also, long thought to be a vestige of World War I, trench warfare is back. See how NATO allies are training for the grueling form of combat. Plus, the U.S. is sharing hard-won lessons about urban warfare from Iraq and Syria with Israeli officials as the ground assault in Gaza gets underway. And what does a Slovenian mountain warfare specialist put in his backpack? You might find a couple of surprises. It's those stories and more in the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon, here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Andrea Scott. House Republicans recently drafted a military authorization that would allow President Joe Biden to strike Iran-backed proxy forces throughout the Middle East in case of escalation. House Foreign Affairs Chairman Mike McCall, a Texas Republican, told Defense News that he is drafting the bill in case Lebanon's Iran-backed militant group Hezbollah steps up its attacks on Israel. In a recent conversation with producer Daniel Woolfolk, Defense News Congress reporter Brian Harris touched on the draft bill and how it is being received by others on the Hill.
Is the president able to take any action on his own with any of the attacks going on that is backed by Hezbollah?
The president, of course, as commander-in-chief, has a lot of power as to where he positions U.S. forces and assets. So, for example, he's deployed 2 carrier strike groups to the Gulf, some 2,000 troops there, some additional aircraft. In terms of active military strikes, though, the president, part of his authority as commander-in-chief, he can, of course, strike back to defend U.S. forces under Article 2 of the Constitution. But if there, for example, if there were to be a broader escalation with Hezbollah targeting Israel, and Biden decided that he wanted to strike Hezbollah, even though there may not be an imminent threat to U.S. forces, then he would need a military authorization from Congress to go ahead and strike these Iran-backed proxies. And that's why Congressman McCall has decided to draft this bill in case either President Biden comes to seek it or Republicans are try to, argue that that is something he should do.
And how is that being received by Democrats?
So Congressman Meeks, the top Democrat on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I talked to him about this, and he called it premature, and he thinks it's potentially escalatory. Not a whole lot of bipartisan backing so far. It may emerge as a partisan factor, but of course, the key question would be, what does President Biden and the White House decide to do in this eventuality? Are they willing to, start perhaps broader war with Hezbollah and Iran-backed proxies and strike them? And if so, then they would need a military authorization from Congress.
Brian, you have a lot on your plate right now. Thanks for covering it, and thanks for having us over.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Next up, with Israel sending troops into Gaza following the October 7th Hamas attacks, the U.S. is stepping forward with some hard-won advice on fighting in similar conditions. After years of war in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria, American military leaders brought home a lot of knowledge in what can often be bloody close-quarters combat. Now, those leaders are passing on that knowledge to Israeli counterparts as ground operations in Gaza get underway.
a lot of military commanders for the United States, got a lot of experience doing ground combat in highly dense urban areas during the Iraq War and in Syria. And they're sharing a lot of those lessons with the Israelis, from Secretary Lloyd Austin on down to a whole slew of military commanders. They have been talking to the Israelis almost daily about these types of issues.
Terrorists like Hamas deliberately target civilians, but democracies don't. This is a time for resolve and not revenge, for purpose and not panic, and for security and not surrender.
And Marine Lieutenant General Jim Glynn, who also spent a lot of time in these dense urban areas as a Marine. He was in Fallujah, Iraq. He also is now a member of a special advisory team that's gone into Israel. A key thing that the U.S. military commanders is talking to the Israelis about is how to minimize civilian deaths. They talk a lot about making sure the Israelis are building that into their planning and into their logistics and into their targeting as they move into this new ground invasion that everyone expects will happen. The U.S. did a lot of that early on in Iraq and also in Syria, where they spent at times weeks and months trying to ferret out all of the insurgents from the Islamic State group in those areas. And they had to be very careful targeting buildings and mosques and schools to avoid civilian casualties. So try to take the emotion out of it and not react quickly just to get revenge, and instead to take a bit more time, plan, get your troops in the right places, get your weapons in the right places so that you can do this in the best possible way. Because everyone knows and everyone has told the Israelis, it's not what you do right now, it's how you do it. So they're trying to make sure that that message gets to the Israelis because the world is watching.
And in military headlines, the Commandant of the Marine Corps was hospitalized this week after experiencing a medical emergency October 29th. Unnamed defense officials told the New York Times that the reason for General Eric Smith's hospitalization was a heart attack. One of the Corps' 3 stars, Lieutenant General Karsten Heckel, started performing the duties of the Commandant in his absence. A hold on military confirmations in the Senate has left the Marine Corps without an assistant commandant for months, leaving Smith with extra duties. On October 27th, just days before his medical emergency, Smith told reporters in Washington at the Military Reporters and Editors Conference that his grueling schedule had not slowed down.
And I just wanted to start off, are you doing 1 or 2 jobs? How many jobs are you doing these days? Because is your assistant commandant in place yet?
No, the assistant commandant nominee, Lieutenant General Chris Mahoney, is not confirmed. So there is no assistant commandant, as is true with all the other services. There's either an assistant with an acting service chief or a service chief who is also acting as the vice chief. So I do not have a vice service chief.
So have things changed significantly since you've been able to step into your post as commandant?
The workload remains the same. There's still the 2 full-time jobs filled by 1 person. So that hasn't changed. I mean, I've moved houses, but I am still doing both of those jobs and using my staff as best I can to fill in where the assistant commandant would normally be full-time, because I simply can't be in 2 places at once.
Well, and so still needs a lot more confirmations, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm mindful that, I'm grateful that I was confirmed, but I'm mindful that I have, DOD-wide has 360 and growing flag and general officers who are not confirmed, who need to be in their positions in the Middle East, in the Pacific. They need to be there to have the exact hand-selected person for a hand-selected job. That they need to marry those up as soon as as we can make that happen. I defer to the Senate on their rules and their procedures. I defend the Constitution, but I can state that it does affect our readiness, and the sooner that I have the people in place to do the jobs I need them to do, the better it will be for the young Marines.
And stay tuned. When we come back, training for modern trench warfare in Europe. Don't go away.
The military and defense market is constantly evolving. Stay on top of the latest news with Sightline Media Group's live events. Continue to learn, understand new tools and technologies.
We're live. You're on in 3.
Defense, government, and industry leaders come together for successful and proven engaging events. You'll gain valuable insight, get the chance to ask questions, all from the comfort of your own home or office. Sign up for our events newsletters and receive alerts for upcoming live streams.
Welcome back. The World War II Museum is the nation's newest exhibit on the Great War and one of the most impressive. Years in the making, the sprawling complex in downtown New Orleans cost $400 million to build and contains a wide range of artifacts from the conflict. This week, the museum opened the final wing of the facility, the Liberty Pavilion, while also hosting the Congressional Medal of Honor Society's annual conference. Military Times was on the ground to bring you this report.
So we're here at the National World War II Museum, and this is an amazing week of celebrations. We're hosting the Congressional Medal of Honor Society's annual reunion. So we have the surviving Medal of Honor recipients here for a variety of community programs and also their internal meetings. And then in addition, we're celebrating the completion of our campus here in New Orleans with our last major pavilion. It's called Liberation. We feature 16 galleries, 3 floors, an incredible experience that talks about the cost of victory, but also the legacy of the war and the relevance of World War II today. The Medal of Honor recipients have a series of community activities. Today, they're actually a forum where they're talking about service and patriotism and legacy, but they'll also travel to local schools and have engagement with high school kids and others in the local community. They'll have some of their internal meetings as this kind of brings them together once a year. And then there'll be a celebration at the end of the week, really an opportunity to kind of highlight the values of their organization about service, patriotism, and valor. They will actually go to various schools in the area, meet with children, have other community events. So in addition to kind of a set piece on stage, this will be a great opportunity to expose a range of people to these incredible Americans. So the new pavilion, our visitors will be incredibly impressed by it. The museum has the mission to tell the story of the American experience in the war that changed the world, why it's fought, how it's won, and what it means today. And this pavilion really focuses on what it means today. I think our visitors will be surprised in many cases by the relevance of World War II to today. They'll be inspired by that, and in many ways they'll appreciate the extent to which World War II actually did change the world, but America's role in the post-war will be illustrated, both our role in the international community, the creation of the United Nations or NATO, but also domestic changes that many of us now take for granted. So the Liberation Pavilion is the final major pavilion on the campus. We're completing a $400 million Road to Victory capital campaign, but the campus itself started now 23 years ago with the D-Day Museum. The original part of the museum is now called the Louisiana Memorial Pavilion. Features some incredible artifacts there. And then over time, the museum has expanded. We have the Solomon Victory Theater, which features Beyond All Boundaries. Here to my left is the Campaigns of Courage, which features major galleries on the road to Tokyo and the road to Berlin. behind me is the Freedom Pavilion and the Boeing Center, which features incredible aircraft. You know, it's suspended from the ceiling that visitors can see at different levels, but also, you know, ground vehicles, tanks, ambulances. And then finally, the newest pavilion will really set up for the visitor a capstone experience. And then I think many visitors, you know, may see this almost as a museum within a museum.
Now from the NATO channel, footage of French and Estonian troops training for what might have once been thought to be a bygone form of combat, large-scale trench warfare. But with the fight in Ukraine stalling into trench-to-trench battles, modern armies are back to preparing troops for fighting in those conditions. Here's a look at how European allies are getting ready for the notoriously brutal style of combat.
Alors, le combat de tranchée, c'est un combat qu'on voit réapparaître dans les conflits modernes aujourd'hui. Donc c'est important pour les troupes partenaires de l'OTAN de travailler ensemble ce combat pour que chacun puisse apprendre des différents procédés que peut avoir chaque armée. Alors effectivement, donc dans un premier temps, ça permet de travailler ce qu'on appelle l'interopérabilité. Donc si un jour un conflit éclate contre l'OTAN, ça permettra pour les différentes troupes partenaires de travailler plus efficacement l'une avec l'autre. Et en plus de ça, sur les combats spécifiques comme le combat de tranchée, les différentes armées vont avoir différents retours d'expérience, différentes procédures qu'on va pouvoir partager et apprendre chacune les unes des autres.
When we return, our personal finance expert is back with her latest bits of wisdom. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack is back with her latest financial advice.
Unmistakably, employment is the #1 concern for most transitioning veterans. And according to FinancialPoise.com, nearly 1 in 4 military spouses are unemployed. But entrepreneurship can change the game for military families. It's a way to create an income using the hard-earned skills unique to vets. Vetrepreneurs are the new veteran business owners, and non-traditional businesses are the new model. So maybe it's time to transition to a new mission: business ownership. Vets are literally cut out for this. It takes tenacity, grit, discipline, and a tireless work ethic. Sound familiar? Keep an open mind. Non-traditional ventures are breaking the mold these days. Go for portability and versatility, something that won't require an office space like photography, multimedia production, or web design. The virtual possibilities are endless, and there's always the option of becoming a franchisee. Vets have a leg up in following the strict plans and guidelines of a franchise business. Whatever your venture, as a vet, you may be better able to get loans and guidance from credit unions, banks, or specialty lenders. You can also take advantage of investment programs run by other vets. And don't forget to check SBA.org for more resources. Your dedication and sense of purpose can be the start of a successful business and your next mission in life.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, fine-tune that radar toward militarytimes.com as well as defensenews.com. And to be the most well-read saw gunner in the squad, sign up for our Early Bird Brief newsletter, compiled each morning to bring you the latest headlines. It's also an audio. Check out the podcast version out each weekday wherever you get your podcasts. And if social media is where you get your open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. We also just fired up a brand new TikTok account that you don't want to miss out on. And stick around after the break. What a Slovenian mountain warfare specialist would make sure to put in his backpack before heading to the hills. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. It's a question we all find ourselves asking from time to time. What would a Slovenian mountain warfare specialist put in his backpack before heading out to fight? Hint, don't forget your ice axe and foldable skis. Those tips and more in this week's A Lesson from an Ally.
Hello, My name is Sebastian Schiller. I am instructor in NATO Mountain Warfare Center of Excellence, and today I will present you how to pack the backpack for the mountains. The preparation for the mountains are starting at home, so you need to be well prepared. So you need to do a route plan in the map, orientate yourself with a compass or GPS. You need extra gloves and cap and sunglasses. Rain cover for the backpack, headlamp and something to write. So first, when we came below the wall, you need to put the helmet on your head. If you go to Ferrata, you will need Ferrata set, harness, gloves, some carabiners to belaying and loops for doing some maneuvers. You need also the rope. What is also in the backpack? So it's a Gore-Tex raincoat, spare clothes. So this is a long sleeve, long pants, socks, and first aid. So all this stuff is for the summer hiking or climbing in the mountains. For winter equipment, what we need, we will start with the pools. This is also we can use for ski pools or just walking pools. When we have a snow, we need to have these 3 pieces. This is avalanche beacon, avalanche probe, and avalanche shovel, ice axe, and crampons. And we have also here for skiing, we use the foldable skis. They are very good for when we go from skiing to climbing. So it's like this, and turn around. Just clip here and here, and there are skis. So the skiing works in one direction, so it's slide down. Because of this hair, you can easily go to the uphill. Even in the summertime, when we go to the mountains, we can find some snow. So for that we need the ice axe or crampons. We have also the big slopes like glaciers, and we can also go to ski in the summertime.
And that's all we have time for in this episode. Thanks for watching, and we'll bring you more military news next week.